Hello, everybody. Charles from GMAT Ninja here. Welcome to the first episode of our series on the best admission stories ever. Here for episode number 1, Jen from ARINGO Consulting. Jen, thank you so much for doing this.
Yay, I'm excited to join Charles.
Okay, so just so people know what's coming, I'm gonna give the one sentence version of each of the 3 epic stories you're gonna tell today. So we have a middle school principal who ended up at Wharton. We have somebody who is actually going for kind of a second MBA, so got one at HEC Paris, wanted a second crack at the Ivy League. So some interesting stuff there as far as trying to steer this person in the right direction. Story number 3, this person had a half-page resume and ended up at an M7 program. So if you're watching live and have questions for Jen, fire away in the chat. I'll keep track of those. With that, Jen, go ahead and start telling us the first story. So tell us about this amazing middle school principal, and we'll get some of their details up here on the screen too.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one is really fun. So this gal came to us and she had already made kind of like a career pivot. She had been working for 4 years in logistics and then decided she wanted to make this big difference, as I think a lot of people felt during COVID that they wanted to do. And so she moved into being a middle school teacher and in New York, and now is thinking like, I need to take this on a bigger level, but like, how do I do this? Where do I do this at? And like thought about an MBA. So we had a conversation, talked about her profile. She'd already taken the GRE because she had to, get ready for all this. And so GRE was pretty solid in the mid 320s. And I think like the biggest thing is that she was passionate, right? Like you could see this, like she wanted to make a change, but kind of like, I'm not really sure how to do this. So when we work with a client, I think the coolest thing is that we do a strategy review. So we have somebody fill out a background document and get to know them better. And so the strategy team has kind of got this like 360 view of somebody and says, like you've already pivoted once in your career and you only feel like it's worth it to do this if you go to the top schools and you're a really non-traditional candidate. Let's figure out how we can really connect the dots for the adcoms. And so what they did was talk about like, we need to capitalize on this passion and the fact that you've like pivoted from business to education and notice these huge gaps in what's available for profit versus nonprofit and education, and that you want to make the difference there. And so to really kind of focus on ed tech as the next step. And so her and the consultant Shriram were able to really connect to this type of goal and motivation, and able to kind of, I think, like throw a little bit of humor in there too. Like I said, like if you can manage middle schoolers, you can manage anyone, right? Like, so she's a really good team player, etc. Like there was a lot of really good things about her profile that made her stand out. And in the end, she got admitted to 3 T10 MBA programs, one of them M7, and is at Wharton right now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, part of what I find interesting about this, like when you look at, so if it was 4 years in logistics, and I don't know what kind of level she was at in logistics or how much career progression she'd had, it almost seems to me like it would have been easier coming straight from logistics instead of having this 4-year detour to becoming a middle school principal. How did you stitch those things together? Because they are so unrelated. Like, what did you do with the logistics from 4 years before? Like, how did you construct that story around all that?
Yeah. So I think that sometimes people get hung up on the pivot, right? Like, oh, how am I going to connect the dots from one place to the next? And I think for her, it kind of came out of the blue because of COVID, right? And I think that one thing that people have to understand is that adcoms are people too. They went through COVID. They know about this renaissance that a lot of people had. Like all of a sudden, people are bakers and I don't know, the YouTube stars and all this fun stuff that happened during COVID. And so, it wasn't a foreign concept to them, I think. So playing on their humanism and their ability to understand people's shifted paradigms and perspectives during this time period, I think was okay. And so having the room to do that, maybe it didn't work well for like the Harvard application, as well as like maybe like the MIT, like, the one page cover letter, like it didn't have enough room to come across. But within the Wharton application, she was able to kind of explain this breadth and depth that she had. And Charles, to answer your real question, logistics. So coordinating business materials, people, etc., is very similar to like what she was doing. And so you just had to kind of start to put it into business concepts, right? Like tying the things together of, students as units, or like managing budgets and logistics of like from one place to the next, and kind of being able to create that corporate speak and integrate it into her educational background, which is what she would actually have to do to start to make a difference post grad, right? Like, so that's where that focus kind of came in. But again, like I still think that the human element of an adcom helped with this situation specifically.
Now, how much of that, Jen, is, so one of the things I'll say to applicants quite a bit is that imagine these poor folks who are reading all these applications, especially as you get to some of the schools that just have huge volumes of applications. It's people who like a good story. How do they keep from getting bored? And they see so many candidates who have very similar backgrounds, and you can do a great job executing on your application and have great odds of admission.
Yeah.
If they're still seeing the same sorts of things, consultants, finance, tech, over and over and over.
Yeah.
How much of her success do you think has something to do with,
Yeah.
okay, I'm on my 750th application of this cycle, and what?
Yeah, I think that it definitely has a surprising element. And I think that it also kind of helps with people who feel like, oh, but I don't come from a blue chip company, or I'm not a consultant, or I'm not that. And it's like, that's okay, right? Like, again, you're going to catch their attention by saying like, what are you wanting to do? And like, now you're digging in and you're like invested in like, how is this teacher going to become, this, ed tech professional? And, why do they want to be here? Like, what's the point? I don't get it. And so they start digging in and getting that story behind it. And I think that's where you get that investment, where somebody's like, here, look, put them at the table. Like, they need to, be here. And then later on, they're like, discussing who does or doesn't get an interview, or who does or doesn't get admitted. And they're like, oh, the middle school teacher, because they're not sitting at the table saying like, oh, that consultant, right? Because it's like, oh, there's, hundreds of those, but the middle school teacher, professor, or principal, really, like, that's different, and it sticks out.
It's vivid. The sound bite's really easy. Oh, the middle school teacher.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, I'm on the career vision, and this is where maybe we get into something that's relevant directly for some people watching. I doubt we have very many middle school principals watching. But sometimes one of the, I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, I think. Sometimes with candidates who are unusual in some way, or candidates who just don't like where they are now. So pivoting candidates, we'll say broadly.
Yeah.
One of the experiences I've had with many of them over the years is the career vision that goes into the essays isn't always really the thing that they want to do. It's often the thing that stitches everything together. It makes sense, but it's not. They're kind of saying, well, hey, I want to go spend my 2 years. I'm going to go explore in business school. I'll figure out what I want to do after that. But I've got to create a story that makes sense that somebody can read. How much was that the case here? Because if I were looking at the story on paper and somebody walks in and says, hey, I've got 4 years of corporate doing logistics or something else corporate, and then I became a middle school principal. Well, I know how hard that is. That's harder from a management perspective than the vast majority of corporate jobs, frankly. You're managing this massive staff. Like, does that set you up well for management experience? Sure. That's not the problem. But what the heck do you tell a business school? I'd be like, oh, yeah, ed tech. I mean, that would be the thing that I would pull out of the sky. So the awkward question, Jen, was that something she actually wanted to do? Was it something she was kind of considering? Or was it something where it was like, this is a good story and I'll figure it out later?
No, I think that this one was authentic, right? And I don't know if it's like 100% like proof in the pudding, but she's technically, doing her internship at a consulting firm this summer. So, I haven't caught up with her to like get the full story right now, but my thought is that she's going to get this broad experience to be able to take it back and start making an impact in that specific community. And that really was her driver, right? Is that she wants to find a way to make a difference. And so I think that the way that this worked out is that it was authentic. And I do see sometimes where people will be like, oh, I want to go into consulting, and consulting feels so generic that it's like this like forced thing. Like anytime somebody tells me in a call, like, I want to go into consulting, I'm like, why? What do you want to do? Like, what is the reason? Because everybody wants to go into consulting. There's 3 big firms. How are you going to make it? How do you make a difference? And I'm kind of mean, but like in the end, that's what the outcome is like, what is this? And then I'm on a tangent, but I'm going to keep going. So I also like to tell them like if you say consulting, you've narrowed your choices down to like 3, maybe 5, 10 companies at max, right? And if you want to go into like product or tech or something, there's thousands upon thousands of companies that you could work for. So now you've just, I don't even know, astronomically doubled something your odds of employment post MBA, which is a big concern of an adcom.
Right. And it's broadened your own possibilities by quite a bit as far as the different kinds of functions, different kinds of companies. Exactly. Last big question on this candidate. What were her interviews like? Did the interviewers, again, sometimes interviewers show up and they've got their list of questions, especially if it's a student or alumni interviewer. Sometimes it's like, hey, here's the questions you have to ask, and that's it. Often when you get somebody from the admissions committee, sometimes alums will freestyle in this too. They pick her deliberately because they're like, I want to talk to this middle school principal. What was that like for her? Like, did she have any interesting interview experiences, or were they all pretty boilerplate?
Well, if I'm thinking back, so Charles, you surprised me with this question. And
sorry.
If I think back, no, that's okay. The schools that she got interviews with and got admitted to. So let's take it from that perspective. Of the schools that she got admitted to, it was with student interviewers, right? So Tuck, NYU, and Wharton, right? Like, well, Wharton's TBD, so it's completely different. But then, like an ambassador at the end. So maybe that's where the connection came, is like, I can see where you're going and what you're wanting to do. And maybe with the other schools, with the interviews, maybe it didn't work out well. Like if we're in retrospect, right? Like maybe it didn't, I don't know. But in the end, like, I think she was able to communicate the message to these like 3 big schools and come through with scholarship. So I think it made sense to them specifically, and she was able to connect the dots.
Amazing. Any final thoughts on her, Jen, before we move to story number 2?
No, I think like it's always for me is like, it's all a marketing process, right? Like, how do you really put things together? And so I think like, it's like, how do you go from middle school to principal to Wharton? This is how.
Well, and it sounds like she just nailed that marketing exercise. And it's when you think about what business leadership is, if you can dazzle somebody with your ability to market yourself, it makes sense. I think that's a totally fair reason to let somebody in, or it's a reasonable thing to be a deciding factor.
If she convinced me, she can convince somebody else.
Yeah. And it sounds like she's doing that. I mean, she talked her way into a great consulting job over the summer. Sounds like she's crushing it. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Story number 2. So second chance at an Ivy. Let me get the slide up here. There we go.
Perfect. Okay. So no, I just want to make sure you didn't have anything else to prompt me before. So this is a client who actually worked with previously. She came back and said, hey, like, I think we did our best with what we could do, like for getting into HEC Paris. She had a 680 GMAT, which is like a 625, which is a bit lower, especially as an Indian female candidate.
And just to be clear, Jen, so the 680 was on the old version of the GMAT. For anybody who's not familiar, GMAT changed late 2023, early 2024. the scale changed. So what you see here in the slide, 680 GMAT old scale, that translates to 625 new scale. So think of this as a 625 functionally if you're watching.
Right, which in their average right now is closer to like a 645-ish. So, she was able to apply to schools and got into HEC Paris, which is fantastic. And so she had 2 years as an analyst at a consulting firm, and then 3 years at a global FMCG in a marketing role. So, good profile, pretty solid. The only thing that she kind of was missing was that GMAT score that felt like, gosh, like if we could get it any higher. But so we move on, and she gets an amazing admit to HEC Paris, is having fun, enjoying that, but still feels like it's not enough. And so she decided that she wanted to apply to this partnership program at Yale. It's called a Master's in Advanced Management. The problem is they only select 50 people. And so it's highly competitive from all of their partner universities, right? Like, what makes you stand out to be one of 50 to get a second master's in business, right? So it's what do you need? And so while she was at HEC, she really gravitated towards the energy sector, got an internship, etc., and feels like this is her area. But the angle that we wanted to use was getting global exposure between India, France/Europe, and then now the US, to be able to bring it back and make a global impact in the sector. And so we were able to kind of pull that together to make a lot more sense for the AdCom than just looking at the statistics of what her scores were.
Okay, so just to get the story straight, because this is a pretty interesting one. And so she's from India, technical undergraduate degree, performed well, it sounds like. So top tier student, very mediocre GMAT score, lower than the median, which is unfortunately not great if you're an Indian applicant. Data analyst, and then worked in marketing. And then she's in France at HEC Paris, great school. I mean, the challenge to me sounds like it's so many bits and pieces. Like it's easy for me to picture a middle school principal who worked in logistics. Oh, I did my 4 years. Maybe I got bored with it, but certainly had a passion for making a difference. Somehow ascended that quick. Okay, I can picture this person. I'm not quite sure why they want to go to business, which was a story you needed to tell to help her get in. For this one, I'm like, I can't even picture this person. It's a bunch of different things that I struggle to make sense of. So, yeah. And then she wants to come to the US to do a second business master's.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like the challenge is help make this make sense. So Jen, when we were talking about the middle school principal, you kind of spoke in terms of the soundbite. So people are talking about this candidate. Oh yeah, what's the shorthand for the candidate? Oh yeah, the middle school principal.
Yeah.
How did you create that for this candidate? What was that soundbite in the end? How did you pull it together into something that was nice and clean and something you could picture?
I think that the biggest thing is when we start connecting the dots is data analytics has a high correlation with marketing, right? A lot of people think marketing is producing commercials and all this fun stuff, but it's not. It's just data, reading, and all the analytics. And so being able to combine this background of data analytics, moving into marketing to shaping and making decisions, and then adding the HEC Paris MBA on top of that, she's able to use her experience from FMCG to a completely different commodity of energy, right? So now we're kind of pivoting into a different market, but we can still use the same skills. So, I mean, I'm not 100% sure what they said at the table, but likely it's the data energy girl, right? Or the data analyst or the data woman or something like that, right? So being able to blend in the courses she took and focused on at HEC Paris, plus her future internship, which is in progress, And then being able to combine that with now being able to take that. I've had an experience. I have my experience in India, but with an FMCG, Unilever, and so it's a big, big market, and working with a global company. And now I want to take it from India to France to the US to be able to shape that global perspective, and bringing it down closer to the Yale like heart and mission is making like business making an impact in society. And so bringing that all the way down to say like I can make a better global impact after being able to experience different markets and really tie them together to make a difference.
And for anybody who's not familiar, can you say more about this particular degree program at Yale?
Yeah, so it's called a Master's in Advanced Management, and it is a selective degree for candidates that are from global university partners of Yale. Well, Yale SOM. And so they allow you to take like a course set of management courses at, SOM to kind of put on top of the MBA you already earned, but then also blend in some of the Yale coursework across the campus as well to kind of polish whatever you're looking to kind of accomplish.
Okay, so it's an add-on to your existing MBA or some other business management degree that you might be doing something else, somewhere else. If that school happens to be a partner of Yale, then you can apply for this selective small cohort. I think you said 50 students?
50. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's insane.
Jen, I want to sort of just a little tiny bit, and then we'll come back to this candidate in a minute.
Yeah.
I often run into people, sometimes on GMAT Club or comments on Reddit or YouTube. Sometimes, every once in a while, we get a student who's in this situation where they already have an MBA from somewhere, or maybe a master's in management, some other, often an MBA, sometimes an MIM, some other degree that is close to an MBA. It's adjacent. It's some master's degree in business, and they want another one or a different one, or one in a different geography. So we'll meet people who say, "Hey, I got my MBA somewhere in Asia. I want to come to the US and do another one." What do you say to those candidates? Does it have to be, if you want a second business graduate degree of some sort, how should you think about that to stand out? Like, can you get 2 MBAs from 2 different places? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. So I think that every school is different. So some US schools, like I think it's like Cornell, maybe even Tuck. It's like 2 of the Northeast schools are kind of this way, where they don't allow you to get a second MBA, like a master's or MBA. So that part is kind of interesting. You have to be somewhat selective in making sure that like I made sure we have like a page that's dedicated to schools that do not allow a second MBA. But beyond that, the next part is the proof part. Why do you need a second MBA? A lot of the times, and a lot of the candidates that I talk to from GMAT Club is like they have a PGP or PGDM that they took immediately after their undergrad degree. And so it's easy to kind of say this was more of like a theoretical degree, less practical, because I hadn't had any experience yet. Plus, like if you're from India, a lot of the times it is more theoretical than practical application. So it's easy to kind of draw that conclusion of I have advanced learning, but I hadn't been able to apply it yet. But now that I have that experience, I know I need like a second MBA or more training to be able to get to wherever I want to be next. And so that could be global or not global.
Okay, so it sounds like you kind of run into 2 categories of candidates. So there's ones who already do have an MBA from somewhere, want a second one. Real headwinds there in the sense that some schools won't even consider that, regardless of where that MBA was from. And then there's another category of folks who maybe did one really early out of undergrad, or maybe directly out of undergrad, where it's much easier to tell that story that, hey, this was a theoretical degree, then I went out and got a few years of experience, now I want a practical one. And it sounds like those candidates face fewer headwinds as long as you can make that case that there's a really compelling reason for them to go to go do that MBA.
Exactly. The ones that have years of experience, then the master's degree, and then more experience and want another degree, that part is the hardest, right? Like, how does this make sense? And some schools are like, bring it on. You want a second MBA? Columbia is all game for it. Other schools are kind of like, well, like at this point, and I think like that's the other thing to kind of say, like if you have a degree experience, then are you still kind of within the MBA average age, right? Like, so you could, it's like, are you, for them, technically one, the rankings, they want to make sure that you're not going to go too far out. But then two is this a valid degree for you? Like, are you going to learn more? Are you too advanced for our traditional 2-year MBA program? And then like, can you get a job after?
Right. Okay. Back to our candidate from India, France, trying to come to the US to go to this advanced management program at Yale.
Yeah.
We buried one of the leads. So I think for most people, I'll pop it back on the screen real quick. I think for a lot of candidates, if you're unhappy with your GMAT score, or maybe you haven't taken the GMAT, but you're worried about it, I imagine that for some folks, what jumps out here is that weakness, right? So applying with what is now the equivalent of a 625 GMAT score, which is lower than the medians, certainly to a place like, Yale's MBA program, HEC Paris is going to be lower. And she's Indian.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that? Was there anything in particular that you did kind of strategically to help overcome that?
Yeah. So I think that one, like being a student at HEC Paris goes and improves, like, hey, like I'm worthy. So like for one word or another, but like I'm worthy, right? Like I have the academic chops to handle it here at Yale. The other thing that is something else to kind of talk about is that these alternative programs or 1-year MBAs that aren't their like flagship MBA 2-year programs, especially at the US, they're not ranked on them. So they're ranked on the 2-year full-time program. And so these different ones, whether it's a 1-year MBA program, an additional like the master's in advanced management, or the J-term start at Columbia, they're not ranked on those programs. So they can accept a wider range of GMAT and GRE scores, which makes it kind of like not as big of a deal, right? For this program, they want to know that you're ready for it. But if you're part of a partner school, then it's an assumption that you're going to be good. That's almost like the same as like way back when there were waivers during COVID. If you graduated from their school with a certain GPA, then you would get a waiver for, a GMAT score if you couldn't appear for it. So it's kind of that thing is like, we assume if you come from this school that you're ready for our program.
Okay. So, and at the risk of sounding a little cynical here, Jen, you can think of the GMAT GRE executive assessment scores as having two purposes in admissions. The original purpose, pure purpose, if you want, is, hey, it's a data point that helps schools understand, can you handle the coursework when you get here? We don't want an empty seat because you run screaming when you see a variable in your econ class. We want to make sure that you can spend time doing all the other important things, recruiting, all of the activities, all of the classes where there's group projects. I mean, all the things besides just sitting there studying. So if you're not ready, it's going to really undermine your ability to succeed in the program. That's the original purpose of standardized testing. It's a data point used alongside your undergraduate record. And I think what you're suggesting here is, well, that second purpose, which is, fortunately or unfortunately, I would say unfortunately, my personal opinion, these scores go into rankings.
Yeah.
And when you're applying to some of these programs that are not the flagship 2-year full-time program, when you're applying to, hey, it's this little niche program, it's 1 year, limited to students of partner programs, or something like a J-term or something like a 1-year program or a part-time program in some cases, we've avoided that second thing entirely. The numbers don't matter from a statistical standpoint. And as long as they know you can handle the work, it's not about the GMAT arms race.
Yep.
Fair?
1000%.
Fair. Okay. So anybody watching who's going, well, my GMAT's low, what do I do here? Again, Barcat myth is unfair, Jen. One thing to think about is a lot of these programs that are not the flagship program that gets ranked in part based on average scores, they have a little bit more leeway to say, okay, the number isn't shiny, or the number isn't shiny for your demographic, But if we have other evidence that says you can handle the work, we're good.
Exactly. And I think that that's where the like 1-year program at like Kellogg or Emory kind of come in, or the tech MBA or the executive MBA or part-time MBA, right? Like there's all these variations. In the end, it technically is all the same degree, right? Like all of them come out and just say that you have an MBA from whatever institution, just a different modality of delivery or level of delivery. And I think that it depends on what you're looking for, but these can be some kind of like back doors to get your MBA.
All right. Anything else you want to say about this candidate?
No, I'm just excited for her.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I love it. And it's one of the things that, and I know you feel the same way. One of the things I sometimes find really frustrating is just the way the MBA world works sometimes. If you're from a crowded demographic, we have to say mean things to you or scary things to you on your way in a lot of the time, because there's going to be a different expectation of what you can do to help out the school's rankings. And some of these, again, I don't want to think of it as a way around it. I don't know if that's the right phrasing. But there are some programs that don't have to worry about that, and they can just evaluate you based on, are you ready? Are you a good candidate? Do you belong here? Is this going to be a good fit? And it makes me happy when we see somebody who would face a lot of headwinds in a flagship program, but because they've chosen something that is a great fit for them, that weakness of a low GMAT score for the demographic is irrelevant. And I think that's a really nice thing to see.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's taking something just because it's like, oh, because it's the Yale name, or this, because it's Kellogg, because it is attached to a price tag. So that's the great part, is you're only applying to things that are going to make sense to you. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to, go to a tech MBA program because I can get into NYU this way. Because if it doesn't make sense to you, it won't make sense to the AdCom either.
Right. The program still has to fit.
Exactly. Right. Like it's something that's going to get you to the next level.
All right. Third and final one. Sent you a half-page resume. Make this make sense, please.
Yes. So, and this happens a lot, right? Like, so the first time I meet somebody, they send over their resume, and either most of the time it's 3 or 4 pages. Like, Charles, I have something to work with, right? Like I can start thinking okay, I could see how this could work. But this guy, he came to us, he, had kind of a solid background, but as far as academics, he was I think they in Saudi, they have a youth generation leadership program that he was part of before he went to school and all this other stuff. So good quality, potential. But then after studying and doing, a finance internship, which was in the US, which is, really good to have that experience. Then he started his own IT venture, which was kind of like a soul venture by himself, which most times they are. So he didn't have any employees, some clients, not a ton yet. And then he also didn't have anybody to do his recommendation letters or anything. So it's how do we even tell an AdCom you're ready for an MBA? And so this is where I would say that my friend Shriram, one of our top consultants, he works his magic. I just don't understand
Shriram's awesome, by the way. Shriram, if you're watching, hey, shout out.
But Shriram pulled it out, right? So he was able to kind of dig in with this guy. And I would say the strategy team kind of was we don't have a lot to go on here, but here's what we think, right? And then that just took the work of Shriram to have conversations and say okay, tell me what you do day in, day out. Tell me about client 1. Tell me about client 20, and then client 50, what happened in between. And in the end, after all of these conversations, they were able to come up with a pretty impressive application, and be able to express intelligence, business acumen, exposure to different markets and like that entrepreneurial spirit, I think is like a big part of what carried it, and innovation, which made sense to the schools that he was applying to. But it was a lot of work, I would say, on his part. And in the end, like, here's the crazy part. So he applied to MIT in round 3, and MIT was like the only school he wanted to go to. And it was like, oh, okay. Because a lot of candidates from Saudi have like a list of schools that you can go to that are part of a program where they essentially pay for, or you can be a sponsored candidate. Why not take advantage of it? But that was the only one he wanted. So MIT in round 3 with a waiver got admitted, but there was a caveat. We're full. We don't have any more spots for you for that fall start. We're going to pre-admit you to next fall.
Wow.
I know. It's like secrets.
And just to be clear, Jen, so when you say with a waiver, you mean a waiver from taking the exams?
Yeah. So GMAT waiver, yeah.
Okay. So didn't have to take the GMAT. A couple things here that I'm fascinated by that I think for people watching are hopefully going to be useful, at least for some people. One is, so as basically running a one-man shop doing IT, what I imagine as you tell that story is somebody who IT can mean a whole lot of things, right? And when it's a one-man shop, it's like, well, is this a real business? Is this just kind of you found some people who need a little bit of help? What's the difference between having your business as a one-man shop and just being a contract worker? It's a really blurry line, right? And so I'm imagining this guy who's going out doing IT work for random companies on his own. How do you stitch that together into something that looks like somebody who has the potential for business leadership? Because it never turned into a business where it was leading anybody. It was just him. So what did that story end up looking like? How did you dig into those client stories and find something there?
The first part was the bullet points on the resume, right? Like the resume bullets were demonstrating that he was doing client work of that level, right? Like, helped a 400-person organization convert the CRM system from this to that, right? Like something to show this scale of his work and the depth, right? Like, so then he's listing a client, he's listing the depth of it and his ability to accomplish it. And then from there, there's also the money markers, right? Like, so I was able to generate X amount of revenue within the first quarter, and to now, increase in 387% or something like that, right? So
in terms of his own revenue, or okay.
Yeah. So he had I guess what the equivalent would be of like an LLC. So he had a P&L, everything that goes with it that you would need versus maybe what a contractor would need. But they were able to define these bullet points to make it make sense for the first glance, right? Like, because that's what you're saying, right? Like the people, they're looking through everything and they're like, what's this? And so they were able to make it make sense so that it could stand on its own of like, hey, like I run my own venture. This is what it is. I'm doing well, but I could do better with an MBA.
Okay. So the scale of his clients, so the scale of the work, size of the projects, maybe is one way to think about it. Enough of them were big enough that regardless of whether he had anybody else working under him, it could come across, certainly at first glance, could come across as real work that's really engaging with the needs of a significant organization. And no need to say in there, well, I had no employees. I mean, that might be somewhere in the fine print.
Yeah.
Didn't need to say that on the resume. Okay. And then from there, how did you go about connecting that to the MBA? Because if somebody's a solo entrepreneur, one-man shop, they're, IT, some sort of consulting services, tutoring, admissions, right? Something like that, where it's just you. How do you go from that to, hey, I want to, be in a career, be in a position where I'm managing an organization, managing a larger group of people?
So I think it's, I guess I was kind of like leading into this, is that showing success as you are and being able to say, like, I've been able to make it this far. For this client, he had a degree in finance and he had done an internship in the US in the finance, like on Wall Street, right? Like, this didn't necessarily connect to IT services directly. He could do the finance side of it, but it's like the logistics and the growth. And, he had some primary leadership training and some community involvement that we could kind of work with after pulling it out of him. And then, so I think like it's you're being able to say, I've made it this far and I've done good, but I want to do well. I want to be exceptional. And I need this specific MBA that is focused on, like innovation, impact, and I guess like ingenuity might be too on the nose for MIT, but like this is what I need. And I need this entrepreneurial like mindset to help me with these types of courses, clubs, etc., to help me get to that next point. So you're connecting the dots for the AdCom to say, you're telling the story. Really, like, I think like that's the biggest thing that people need to understand is they're telling the narrative. So the AdCom isn't assuming anything. Like you might have said, like, what is this? Like, are you a one-man show? And what does this mean? So you have to tell the story for them between your resume and your essays. And I think like also the video for MIT, like able to kind of make those connections to feel strong enough to say like, okay, like we think you'd be good here. Or maybe we think that he could be a disruptor. Who knows?
So a couple pieces that, again, if I were a candidate watching, I might go, wait. GMAT waiver? So this is something that, so we're filming this July 2026. The landscape has changed constantly around waivers, test optional. I mean, the last 6-7 years since COVID, a little bit before that. Yeah. Schools are constantly changing their policies. So whatever we say here may be obsolete tomorrow. But Jen, if you could just say a little bit about how waivers, I guess, worked for this candidate at MIT, how waivers work in general.
Yeah.
How can this guy get away with not taking the GMAT? How does that work?
I feel like that's like the question for everybody when they start this process of like, oh, wait, what? Like, not only do I have to write an application, I have to write an exam that I have to study for. So, I mean, obviously this was like the caveat of, COVID. This was like the extended period, like the last year that waivers were even available. But whenever a school offers a GMAT waiver, what they want in return is evidence of readiness. For this candidate, they have a degree in finance and they did an internship on Wall Street, and there was, quantitative parts and technical parts of the job that his business itself. But that's what they're looking for in your resume, your essays, or even your GMAT waiver request. So you need to prove to them that you're ready for this program and that you can like handle going into accounting, and you can go into econ and all these other parts of the MBA program and be able to handle it. And so you do that through your resume, your essays, and then again, like that waiver request usually. Hopefully that helps answer that question. Can't remember.
And I think it's related to what we were saying about the last candidate, the woman who was going to HEC Paris, wanted to apply to the selective program at Yale, was, okay, the GMAT score is low, but when you think about what admissions committees really need around test scores, why are test scores there? First priority is, as long as we understand the candidate can do the work, we're good. And it sounds like this candidate had plenty of other evidence for that. And yeah, there's all the ranking stuff and the averages matter and et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes there's ways around that. And this candidate sounds like very much found one. And I mean, it sounds like he was perfectly well qualified in terms of his quantitative academic skills. Sounds like they weren't an issue at all. And schools recognized that when he applied, or MIT recognized that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, it's up to you to figure out how to tell that story of proving that to them. And it could be, that you had all A's in your statistics and quantitative courses, or like, let's even say that like you, and I mean, Charles, you're more of an expert than I am, but like, let's say that you're pre-med and you have to take like organic chemistry and all of those bio courses. There's math in all of that. I mean, I think that organic chemistry is nothing but math in theory, I guess. I don't know, but you can pull all of that out to be able to show them this evidence.
Yes. Yeah. And again, not to say the numbers don't matter. What's really nice about the GMAT or GRE or executive assessment, it's a really nice shorthand, right? It's, hey, there's a number. We don't have to spend time thinking about it. It's great if you have that. But if that's going to be a struggle, yes, the rankings matter. And sometimes you just need that number depending on where you're applying in the situation. But I think the experience that I've had, speaking to admissions committee people, but more secondhand watching applicants and watching how schools react to them, and tell me if you disagree, Jen, schools want to believe. They want to believe that you're going to be fine. Like when you are a compelling candidate in other ways, they are more than happy to look for other reasons to believe that you're going to be fine academically. And I had a student years ago who he was from Germany. He worked for a publisher. His undergraduate degree was not quantitative. His GMAT score his composite was really good because he crushed verbal, but his quant was shaky. I mean, it was not, again, different scale back then, but it was not a strong, I mean, it was a good 4 points on the section below what would typically get in these programs. And we just said, okay, we're going to, every chance we get in this application, we're going to find ways to say that you are numbers guy, data guy. So his recommenders, so he was in a finance division of a publisher, they just went crazy on like, oh yeah, the things this guy does with his spreadsheets, they're amazing. Like they leaned in and really helped. And then some of the stories we told, the applications were longer back then, and had a whole story about his hobby as a, I think, triathlete, if I remember right, and the way he was using data. So there was all of this messaging about, I'm a data guy, I'm a numbers guy,
macros and all that fun stuff. That makes sense.
And it worked. He got into Harvard. I mean, it worked out for him with his, 60th percentile on the quant.
Right. And there's always those exceptions to the rules. And I feel like the hardest part is you never know that if you could be the exception to the rule unless you try. And now I'm not trying to convince somebody with a sub 605 that like you can absolutely get into Harvard, but it does happen. And there are moments when they take a chance because you've given them evidence that you can be successful in a different way. And I'll say, and I again, like you have a lot more expertise than I do in this specific moment, but there are specific countries even that don't do well on the GMAT historically, right? Like statistically, historically, things like that. And I think that the areas that I know that have been pulled out in presentations I've been part of is like sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Latin America.
Yes.
Any other caveats you can think of?
No, I think that's fair. I mean, and maybe the broader principle there is that GMAT scores, GRE scores, EA scores, they're interpreted on a bit of a curve, right? And not in, and it's first and foremost kind of through the lens of what else do we understand about this candidate? So, hey, this is somebody with a 3.9 from an amazing program that's quantitative, and their GMAT score is kind of lowish. Are we worried about that person? This seems like somebody that might have just kind of, maybe they're freaking out when they take a test. And I mean, that's a really obvious case of it. And sometimes it's, we love this candidate in other ways, and they bring other things to the table, and they're going to look harder for a reason.
We have to have them.
They're going to show up prepared. Yeah. We have to have them. And as long as we see enough evidence that the coursework has been strong, or extra coursework they did preparing to apply for the MBA or whatever, schools will look for that and take it into account. And that's what allows them to overlook a score that's low.
And I think there's also some historical evidence of past candidates, right? So I think like that's another thing that sometimes when I talk to somebody with a low GMAT score is, do you know anybody else from your batch or from your same school that went to, to this school? And I think like Kellogg is almost one of those schools that feels like a little bit picky on which international schools that they do pick from. So you always kind of want to align with somebody else who's already, coming from your school or your batch. So referencing current students and things like that, that's where some research can actually come in handy to say like, if I can associate myself with somebody else who has come from either the same background, the same degree, or something similar, and they've done well, then so will I.
Yeah.
That's my thought process.
Yeah, makes total sense. One last thing on this candidate, then we'll take a question or two from audience members. This round 3 thing that you talked about, there's so much mythology around it, and you hear every version of it, and they all have a grain of truth. Oh, round 3, don't waste your time. Oh, round 3, certain candidates get in, other candidates get ignored.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff out there. So this particular candidate applied in round 3 with the GMAT waiver, got in, and it was full. So started not a few months later, but a year and a few months later.
Yep.
Say a little bit about how should candidates watching this think about round 3 broadly?
Yeah. So round 3 is a Hail Mary for everyone, right? So from the AdCom's perspective, they're trying to create a class and they curate a class. They're finding people with different backgrounds to, make out this really cool class where people are going to learn from each other. And they can still have holes in round 3, whether that's we admitted somebody in round 1 that was going to fill this hole, but they, chose another school and they're not coming now. So there's holes that they need to fill. There's also potentially some averages of like GMAT GRE score or anything that like goes into rankings that they may need to also round out. So if you have a high GMAT score, this might be, but like high GMAT score, so you're great as a quantitative candidate, less great as a qualitative candidate. Round 3 could be fantastic because you're going to help them round out their GMAT GRE scores and their averages there. Or like if you come from a very niche area, this could be that moment where you could shine as like the only person who is coming from an energy entrepreneurship role in Latvia. Okay, fantastic. We need that because we don't have it. And so that's kind of where the AdCom is that they've had some people who they thought were going to come that aren't coming, or they have holes that they've never been able to fill. The other question is the person who's applying in round 3 ready? Like what made them decide to wait this entire cycle to apply? And if we admit them, will they come? And that's a big part for AdComs as far as one of their statistics is yield. If we admit them, how many people we admit versus how many people attend, that also impacts rankings. And so there's this scary moment there. This is why we have seen quite the increase in waitlist, because they're saying like, okay, we don't know if you really like us or you don't, so we'll put you on the wait list. For some people, not everybody is on the wait list for this reason, but we don't know if you really like us or not. So show us some more love, and then, then we can admit you after we know that you want us for real, and we're not just a backup school. And then as a candidate, these schools are also looking at visa processing time, right? Like, so they're saying like, okay, if we admit you in round 3, probably get your admissions letter in April-ish. Is there enough time for your visa to be processed? Now, I will say that the U.S. seems to be the caveat to any of this. Like the U.S. is like the destination that usually becomes the issue with visas and taking longer. For most other top MBA programs in Europe and UK, maybe even like Asia, China, they're not having as many issues with getting visas to enter their country for education, whereas US, it's bogged down, 1 from numbers, 2 from geopolitical things. And so I would say that like that's something else to kind of play with is what are the visa wait times that I'm looking at already in round 3? And sorry, I just keep going, right? Like Charles, you can always stop me. But like the other thing that a round 3 student is thinking is, okay, so if I apply now and I don't get admitted, do I reapply in round 1? And what's different between round 3 and round 1? So
tell me if this is unfair, Jen. What I usually say to students about round 3 is it's not necessarily that the odds are terrible or that the odds are great. The problem is we don't know until after the cycle is over, because there are so many things that drive schools need to admit more people in round 3. Some schools have
Yeah.
around 4. And you just don't know. So if you're okay with that black box, you have a compelling reason why you want to be starting the program 5 months after you apply or 4 months after you apply, whatever the timeline might be, you can do it. It's feasible for you to do it. No harm in it. Schools like reapplicants. You will have a challenge in saying, well, wait a minute, I'm going to get my, if you don't get in and you decide to reapply, you've got only a few months to kind of figure out how to repackage, change the messaging, do something that's going to be additive to the application so it doesn't repeat itself. There's challenges there.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, we see there have been cycles where there are fewer applicants than schools expect, or people are declining their offers left, right, and center, where all of a sudden round 3, round 4, they'll take any warm body. We see that occasionally. It's not typical, but it happens in weird cycles and you just don't know. So take a swing, just understand that it's not the odds are bad. The odds are completely unknown. We don't know what to tell you. Why not take a swing if you want to?
Yeah, the outcomes don't even know, to be honest. Because again, like they just don't know if somebody's going to show up. And there's so much hesitation in all of that for them that they're always going to kind of try to hedge their bets and potentially waitlist you. So if that happens in round 3 and you get waitlisted, it's a very positive sign. It means like, hey, you're definitely admissible, but likely the problem was that they didn't find a spot for you yet.
And odds are good that they will.
Yeah.
All right. About 3 minutes left here, 3-4 minutes left. So the quick answer on letters of recommendation. So renewable energy entrepreneur. Right there. Interesting. I'm sure there's an interesting story. Any quick advice on how to think about a letter of recommendation?
Yeah. So obviously, like past employers can write letters of recommendation. We had this amazing candidate. She should be my next profile, but she and her family started a busing company in New York, right? And it was a family business. Everybody was related to her, right?
I know this person well. She was our student.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I think we probably sent her over to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we ended up finding is their financial advisor was able to be a recommender for her and help with demonstrating her readiness, et cetera, and coaching her in that part of the business. So you can take this in a couple of different ways. One is if you have a financial advisor, which maybe you might not yet, or a mentor, there could definitely be the possibility of using that, or, potentially a client. So you have a variety of different people you can choose from. If it's still too narrow for you, I would reach out to the admissions committee and ask them what they would prefer. Adcoms like to talk to you. I know that it seems scary, and you can even use a fake screening, if you want to. I don't know why people are so scared. Really, no notes go into your file, of note, no true notes go into your file until after your application goes in, unless it's something absurd, then we don't need to talk anyways. But beyond that, yeah.
So I was going to say, you could think of that. A lot of people, I think that fear comes from thinking of admissions committees as gatekeepers. They're matchmakers. They're not gatekeepers.
Great.
They want to find the right fit. So if there's an opportunity for you to say, they want you to put your best application in so that they can find the best matches for their program. So don't be shy about asking those questions.
Yeah.
And so if you find recommenders, even if they're not supervisors who can talk about you really well, great. And I think that's great advice, Jen. If you're not sure, go ask the admissions committee.
Yeah. And they have coffee chats and everything. And they're really trying to get in touch with people in one way or another. So feel free to engage with them, because otherwise they're sitting there bored on an open Zoom call.
Yep. And they're sitting, yes. Talk to them, talk to people. They like it. Okay. We've got to wrap up here. Last minute. Here's where you find Jen. So Jen, any final wisecracks?
Well, so if you like Charles, you'll like me. That could be one. But yeah, so I think that in the end, I think that the biggest thing is that schools are open to different profiles. You just got to find your angle as to why you're a good fit. And you've got to be able to pitch it in the right way and tell the story. And sometimes you can do that on your own, and sometimes you need help. And if you need help, that's what I'm here to do.
Awesome. Jen, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks.
If you're still watching this in minute number 60, please hit that like button and come join us. We'll be doing this live. So again, we're filming this live July 2026. Join us live every Wednesday, GMAT Ninja Wednesdays. We're going to do 5 of these this month before we move on to some other stuff. Certain things you want to see, certain kinds of profiles, tag me, GMAT Club, any of the socials, and we will do our best to make it happen. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. And thank you so much, Jen.
Bye, y'all.